So, Wood by Alice in Chains, that opening riff. This is a line that comes up time and time again when people comment on some of my pick lessons. It's not the most obvious of lines, even though it's pretty much played solo in the opening of the original recording. So, let's take a look at it, and I'll give you a step-by-step method for practicing not only this line, but also any other bass, riff, fill, or even solo you might be finding problematic. So, here's that main opening riff. Obviously, this riff was played by the late, great Mike Starr, and I have to say that when I first heard this when it was released in 1992, and also Rust in Peace by Megadeth, I went from being a total finger-picking snob to a major pick fanboy. I absolutely loved Mike's tone, and it sent me into a complete bout of cognitive dissonance. I'd always thought, stupidly, picks are for guitarists, picks are illegal. This tune changed all of that. It just sounded really, really cool. So for this song, you have to detune a half step, so you're down at E flat instead of E, and that's what gives it that really deep, loose sound. He's using a Spectre on the original and using palm muting, but he doesn't always, and I'll get into that in a minute. First things first, let's work through the notes in there. Now, I'm tuned down to E flat, but I'm just going to name the notes as if we were tuned in E. So, when I play the open E string, it's going to be an E, even though it is actually an E flat. It's just going to make it a lot easier all round. So we begin with this phrase. So we're starting on the open E string there, then straight to the second fret there, the F sharp, and then hit two more notes on there. So that's your first beat of 16th notes. Okay, so open E string, hammer on. I'm hammering on with that first finger, so you just bring that finger down and hold it there. Then for that second beat, so we have a pull off this time, so we've got that F sharp again, and then we just pull it off the edge of the string so that we come down to that open E string again. And then we just hit that E twice again. So first two beats. Then for the third beat we have, so open E string, second fret and third fret, so E, F sharp, G, so, and then we played that twice as eighth notes. So, then we finish that bar with two 16th notes on that G again, so that third fret, so. Then we're into the second bar and we have G and open E, two 8th notes. So adding that onto the first bar. Then at that second beat we have, so we've got three 16th notes on the open E string. So 1, 2, 3, and then we hit the G, the third fret of the E string, and then we pull off to the open E string again, and then we pick the open E twice. So putting all that together so far. And then we just finish on the fourth beat with 8th note, two 16th notes, 4 and so. So, that's the notes. Now, before we move into the practice method that I mentioned earlier, it's worth noting that on the original recording, Mike uses palm muting. That's how he gets that cool, menacing tone. He's holding the picking hand lightly against the strings at the bridge and picking like this. So you can hear we get that muted tone. So I'm using this part of the hand here to hold against the strings there, and depending on where you place the hand, that's going to determine how much muting you get. So if you hold it fairly far down the string, you're going to really mute it off. Now, the further back you go, eventually you'll have no muting. But as you bring it a little bit further down, you'll get that, the amount of muting that's required for this. So maybe bring the hand all the way back here and then just bring it slightly down until you get that particular tone where you've got a lot of body to the sound. You don't want it to get too muted because you'll just lose all of the tone. A little bit further back here, that should be fine. So with the palm muting, it sounds like this. As well as palm muting, he's also hitting a lot with the edge of the pick, which gives him more of a grinding sound. So instead of hitting with the flat side, which sounds like that, he's picking with the edge of the pick. So you get more of this. You get that grind in there. So flat, edge. Okay, so that's how you get that really grinding kind of metal tone in there. Now, any of you Alice in Chains fans out there will have seen him playing this live, and you'll notice that he usually plays it without the palm muting, just straight up hard and picking on that low hung Spectre. I suspect that the longer strap length is probably one of the reasons for that, but it might also be just the fact that it's a lot clearer and ballsy in a live gig. So now let's have a look at how you can practice this riff if you're finding it hard to get that 2-bar rhythm into your head. And this is great practice for any bass line giving you trouble. The key is to build it up in small chunks, maybe 1 or 2 notes at a time. That way you can focus on your technique in a very strict way. So let's work through that riff again in smaller steps, and we'll pay special attention to the picking hand as we go. So if we just take the first beat in there, we can really get out the musical microscope and focus on the technique and, the picking hand there. So I'm starting with that downstroke, then the hammer on, and then we've got those 2 alternating picks. So when I play the next pick, I'm actually picking upstroke and downstroke. So down, then up, down. You could play down and then down, but that's just how I'm playing it. I'm playing down and then up, down. But whatever you do, whichever way you do it, you want it to be consistent. If you play different every time, then you're practicing a different riff pretty much. Yes, the notes might be the same, but in effect, you're actually playing a different thing. So just make sure that each time you do it, there's consistency in there. So now let's add the second beat. So we've got those 2 alternate picks. We've got the downstroke, and then it's upstroke, pull off. Then down, up. You can just practice that part round and round until you've got the muscle memory in there. Now, obviously, this is going to seem really, really simple and almost pointless. I mean, why just break it down to that amount of notes? Well, if you're going to be playing a really tough line, not that this is really, really tough, but if you're learning a much, much harder line, this way of learning is always going to help out. Because if you've got something that you just, you're having loads of problems with, like a Rush tune or something like that, break it down to maybe 2 notes. You'll never find it that difficult to play 2 notes, no matter how hard the line is. Then add another note, add another note. If you focus on the picking action, the fretting hand, at a very slow tempo, just those first few notes, then just build it up, step by step, just smaller building blocks. You will get there in the end, no matter how difficult it might seem. And this is a great riff for practicing in that way, because it's not a tough one, but for some people, just because it just moves around a few notes in there, it can seem a little bit tricky to get down, just in terms of which notes go where and where the rhythms are. So just building it up in steps like this is always going to help. So now let's just add a few more notes. So after the upstroke there, we have down, up, down, as we rise up from the E up to the G. So. And then upstroke for the second G. And then we just get the down, up for the 2 16th notes. Just taking that little phrase there in isolation, we get to focus on the picking action. And then we can just keep adding those small collections of notes, so I'll just work through them quite quickly. So. And then. It's worth noting there that when we play the 16th notes, we're starting on the downstroke, down, up, down. Then when we play the G for the pull-off, we've got an upstroke. So that's our little waypoint in there. You should feel that upstroke and then the pull-off. If you're not on the upstroke and you're on the downstroke, you know that you've played something different. So it's worth slowing it all down again, just working through it and working out where those picking actions are. And then we just add some more. And that's the whole thing. So, like I said, you don't have to use the exact picking pattern that I'm using here, but you do want to make sure that you're pretty consistent with it. Because like I said, if you have a different picking pattern each time, you're practicing a different piece each time. Okay, so that's wood. Be sure to let me know if there are any other riffs that you're having trouble with, and I'll try to cover them on the channel. Remember, there are over 800 other free lessons that you can watch here on YouTube, on the TalkingBass channel, or you can go on over to the TalkingBass website where they are all organised by topic for ease of navigation. Then you can sign up for the free TalkingBass membership where you'll find a ton of free downloads, forums, ebooks and more. Then if you want a bit more frenzied pick action, check out this video where I break down the main tricky riff from the song Holy War's The Punishment Due by Megadeth. It's a great song for working on your pick technique, and I once again break the riff down into smaller chunks so it's easier to digest. No lansoprazole required. That's one for all my acid reflux friends out there. See you next week.